before we get into that, before we get into Squid Game, before we get into Dune, I want to talk a bit about the history of Dune, which I dug up here on my phone. I'm going to look at my phone. So if you're watching the video, I'm actually looking at my phone. It's going to look really bad. Yay. But don't worry. I do have a low graphic here. So you can see a copy of the original published Dune right there. So, hey, it's not all bad. It's not all bad. You know what? The important thing in podcasting is to get set up early and make sure you have everything open that you need, which of course I did. I'm not loading it up right now. I don't know what you're talking about. But anyways, the history of Dune, of course, begins with Frank Herbert. He published the original book and born Franklin Patrick Herbert Jr. October 8th, 1920. According to his son, Brian. It is Brian, right? Yes, Brian Herbert. He actually never graduated from university or college. He simply took courses that interested him, which I thought that's super interesting. It's kind of the way I would envision college being like in a perfect world. You just go there and learn the things you want to learn. Technically a degree is supposed to have value, but that it really gets iffy, the actual value of a degree, especially as the economy in the US goes more service based. It gets really frustrating. Anyways, off topic. We're talking about Dune here. Some of his favorite authors were H.G. Wells, Robert Heinlein, Poul Anderson, and Jack Vance. I'm not gonna lie, I have not heard of those last two, so little confession. Heinlein is someone I've always meant to read. I've read The Time Machine. God, I read it in, it wasn't even college, it was high school I read that. So it's been a little while. For over a decade, he did lots of writing for various magazines and newspapers. And in fact, one of those assignments was a magazine assignment. He was assigned to write about the sand dunes outside Florence, Oregon, which served as the wow, I'm reading right into it. Anyways, he was assigned to write about the sand dunes outside Florence, Oregon, and of course, that was the inspiration for his book, and his book titled The Dune, this desert world. And this is something that was originally a serialized thing in 3 parts. And if you actually read the book, which is what's the word? It's a collection of all 3 parts. When it was published in 1965. But each one separated into 3 sections. The first one is by far the biggest. And it's something you'll notice, and we'll probably get to when we talk about the movies. You really notice this with the 1984 version, how heavy the first part is in exposition. You get like an hour of Act 1 in that, because they are just setting up so much stuff, much to that movie's disservice. But we're going to get to that. We're mainly talking about the book right now. But yeah, part 1 of Dune is lots of setup. It's not bad. I can't say I read it. I listened to it. It's actually, it's good. I can get to my thoughts on the book later. In fact, I probably will, because we're talking a lot about Dune. It was the very first novel to win the Nebula Award. So that's a pretty big deal. It did that in 1966, and it tied with Roger Zelazny's This Immortal. I'm not gonna lie, I've never heard of that. And for the winner of the Hugo Award, that was also in 1966. However, the book wasn't really a huge seller. It didn't really pick up steam until 1968. And now, this is something I didn't realize, although it makes sense, it's so popular. It is frequently cited as one of the best-selling sci-fi books in history, if not the best. I don't see a definitive list. I would think there'd be some sort of definitive list of like best-selling books, but I can't find it in my research. So if you know of something like that, give it to me. Best-selling sci-fi books of all time. I can't find a definitive list. I found various lists, and Dune was either number 1 or number 2. And it's worth noting, sci-fi would not include stuff like Lord of the Rings. Sci-fi and fantasy are genres frequently merged together, but there is a difference between those. So when you're talking about best-selling sci-fi, yeah, I would not put Lord of the Rings in that category. Dune is definitely in that category. Uh, you, it's one of those things where you like fantasy is more of magic and mysticism, which sci-fi can have elements of, but sci-fi is going to be more like futuristic, largely kind of technical based. Um, yeah, I guess getting into the difference of sci-fi and fantasy if you don't know a bit there. But yes, it had an impact. It was a big deal. So much so that I didn't take note, but there was a movie version that was getting in pre-production in the 70s, and I don't see the name of the director in front of me. But yes, that obviously never came to fruition. Herbert himself continued writing Dune for a lot of his career. He wrote 5 sequels. It's Dune Messiah, Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and Chapter House of Dune. And his son, along with author Kevin J. Anderson, have continued the series after he died. He died, sadly, of a pulmonary embolism after his surgery for pancreatic cancer, February 11th, 1986. Now, I do not have the quote in front of me. In fact, give me a second to look it up. But he did have a chance to see the 1984 version of the movie, and I would like to share what he said. There we go. That sounds promising. Okay, here we go. We have an ET article. Upon the debut. Oh my God, why can't I say debut? Upon the debut of Dune's first cinematic adaptation in 1984, Herbert opened up to ET about his reaction to Lynch's final project, McLaughlin's casting, Star Wars comparison, and how the book was initially received. I didn't hold anything back in Dune. It all hangs out, and maybe people liked what they read. The critics didn't like it, Herbert told ET in 1984, leading up to the movie's premiere. The critics panned it when it first came out, and it was rejected 22 times. In the years following Dune's publication in 1965... Wait, is that his quote? No, that's not his quote. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Oh yes, he also talked about it's a different language on screen, and if they're sensitive about picking their visual metaphors, the story comes off on the screen. Yeah, I feel that's obvious. They only left out one scene that I wish they had included, the banquet scene. Yeah, actually, they did leave that out. I remember that. I know why they did. There's lots of time restrictions and other constrictions. Let's see. Man, there's lots of extra stuff in here. Yeah, I should have put this together. I did have it put together, but I totally thought of this on the fly. Okay. Some of the sets are not what they visualize. Some are, and some are better. What would you expect from Anthony Masters, Dune's production designer, and David Lynch? They're both artists. Why wouldn't they improve on the visual sense of the film? And they have free license to do this. This is what film is all about. So it kind of sounds like his opinion was not to get too hands-on with the film itself. There are people who want me to be a cult figure and insist that I be a cult figure. My reaction is to say, go read the book again. In fact, go read them all, because I was talking against cult figures. And here we go, about McLaughlin, it seems like. Kyle MacLachlan, who plays the lead in that. That was exactly what I told them to do. I said, get somebody who's never been on screen before and put him in this part so he doesn't bring any detritus from other parts into the scenes. Yes, that was actually the first performance by Kyle MacLachlan in that movie, for context. Paul was someone I could retreat to in that difficult stage. Oh wait, that's MacLachlan talking. Herbert here, there's a kind of natural bond being from the same state, but Kyle's an easy guy to like, and he's extremely personable in a natural way. What are his final thoughts? uh, let's see. He says here, the best critic is time, doesn't endure. I'm not going to be around to know if my grandchildren and great-grandchildren are going to be reading this in college or that sort of thing. But it seems to me that this is a distinct possibility now. I would not agree to make this adaptation of the book. Oh wait, that's Villeneuve. God. For all the pomp of them talking about that, that's all there was. So maybe that's why I didn't include it in my notes. But anyways, there's lots of sequels to this book, and here's a quote by Frank Herbert that I really want to share. I don't worry about inspiration or anything like that. Later, coming back and reading what I have produced, I am unable to detect the difference between what came easily and when I had to sit down and say, well, now it's writing time, and now I'll write. I want to state, as a writer, I know I just write YouTube videos and stuff like that. That is so true. Sometimes you just have thoughts flowing from your head, and you can't type fast enough to get all your thoughts out. And then there's other times where you're just pushing for every word. And once you do a first draft and then you reread it and do your polish, there's no difference between those parts. Virtually no difference. So if you're a writer, the key is you write. And I think that's something that quote really brought together nicely. Ooh, and Bobby is good to go. So let me go ahead and pause this for a moment. And when I come back, Bobby should be with us.